Thank you for having me here at the Best Buddies Lunch. And alone, I'm honored to be speaking with you. My name is Daniel, and I'm the founder of Special Chronicles, a nonprofit media platform that gives respect and voice to people with special needs. This year, 2017, is 9 years that I've been working at Special Chronicles. Next year, 2018, we'll be celebrating the 10-year anniversary, a decade since I created Special Chronicles. I was truly honored to speak at last month's leadership conference, and I'm again honored to be speaking with you today of how you can take your disability advocacy and Best Buddies programs to the next level. How many of you guys had the opportunity to see me speak at leadership conference? You can put a check mark next to your name. Awesome, awesome. So you can uncheck your name. A brief backstory on who I am. So I was born 3 1/3 months premature 28 years ago when I was much shorter than I am today. I had a little bit more hair than I do now. I weighed 2 pounds, but I drastically dropped down to 25% down to 1.5 pounds. I had a lot of surgeries and close calls with dying. I was diagnosed with learning disabilities, a severe language disorder, and developmental delays. I spent all my years in special ed. In my high school years, back in 2004, I participated in my local Best Buddies chapter at my high school with Best Buddy, and I also served as the communications officer in communicating the events that we did at our high school Best Buddies club. This was one of my early introductions into communicating Best Buddies and my advocacy in our local school community. I recently learned that communication is my biggest struggle, but it's also my biggest passion. Fast forward to almost a decade later, I graduated from Roosevelt University in Chicago in December 2012 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in journalism. And throughout my 4.5 years in college, I had accommodations through the Disability Services Office. Now, a little bit about how Special Chronicles began, which I'm sure a lot of you guys here on the call today are wondering about. It began as an occasional podcast in November of 2008 during my first year of college. And I started by listening to other podcasts from a friend of mine, Father Roderick in the Netherlands, and I gained a lot of insight and started to record the audio of the speeches that I was given as a global messenger for Special Olympics, and that really was the beginning of how people started to hear my story, and then other stories of my friends who also had disabilities. I've learned that through Special Chronicles and through podcasting, it's been a way to practice skills, both myself and others with disabilities, of interviewing skills and producing a show. One guest a few years ago, who also has special needs, he first appeared on Special Chronicles, and then he appeared on a major broadcast network. By first appearing on Special Chronicles, he was able to gain a lot of practice of what it was like to be interviewed, and he gained a lot of confidence to be interviewed on a big media platform. So interviewing and talking in an informal setting, like a conversation between friends, is one of the big skills that anyone with special needs, or even those without, can gain here at Special Chronicles. So shortly after I started Special Chronicles, I started getting emails and social media messages from listeners across the globe about the global impact that I was making in their lives. Recently, a listener told me when she had a difficult day, she goes to Special Chronicles to be encouraged. Special Chronicles has grown to become a pioneer and nonprofit media platform that gives respect and voice to people with special needs. I produce podcasts, award-winning columns, and news stories that have reached over 41,000 views globally in over 130 countries. One listener had used the R word on another podcast, and once he began listening to Special Chronicles, his perspective changed. His perspective of having a better understanding and a better acceptance towards us has really changed for the better. And this was the beginning of how I learned that we were making a big difference in the mainstream community. And Special Chronicles has led to other opportunities, like through when I became a global messenger for Special Olympics and recorded the audio of those speeches. That was one avenue, one other platform that people were able to kind of hear my story and thus create a community of understanding and acceptance. This will also help those listening to recognize that their support of one person's dream can lead to a career and a voice across many different platforms out there. Another example of a listener, I was in Washington, D.C. last year at a Special Olympics Unified basketball game, and one listener had come, and when he both met me in person and saw the Special Olympics game, his perspective had changed on what that experience was like. Those of us with special needs, we bring a value to humanity and storytelling. It's an important part in advocating for our rights and having our voices heard that our community of listeners have really gained, that we bring this value and we bring this value to humanity through our storytelling. So there's lots of special needs stories that are told through video, but there's a unique craft to tell our stories through audio and through the interviews and the talk radio format. So our global impact here at Special Chronicles, listeners have already felt a community. So often, folks with disabilities feel they are alone. But by listening to our hundreds of podcasts, they know that there are others of all different abilities who go through similar challenges in life. Listeners have found a big sense of community. I was recently told that a listener who had a difficult day goes to Special Chronicles to be encouraged. So I had a leadership conference last month and an opportunity to sit down with Anthony, and we had a powerful conversation. You can, if you missed that, we did stream that on Facebook Live, but if you missed that, you can go to specialchronicles.com/busbuddies endorsement to find a link to that video and podcast that I had done with Anthony. One of the, two of the many guests that we've had on is my friend Daniel Smrokowski and her daughter Joelle, who has Williams syndrome and are part of the Special Olympics cheerleading program. Joel also had attended the leadership conference last month as well. And so there's a video that you can find on our YouTube channel for Special Chronicles that, and it's also on the About page on specialchronicles.com that talks, what Gary and Joel talk about the impact, the amazing impact, as Joel says, that Special Chronicles is truly making on our community. A little bit more about what we do here at Special Chronicles. Listeners have said that Special Chronicles is a terrific, must-listen-to content provider that is entertaining, informative, sincere, and inspirational. Along with myself as the founder of Special Chronicles, we have contributors with and without disabilities who are working in an inclusive environment. Special Chronicles is creating a community of inclusion, of understanding, of tolerance, of support, of inspiration, and is a tremendous source of content with an informed perspective and entertaining projects. We are bridging the gap between people of all abilities by inspiring the human spirit. There's many guests that have appeared on Special Chronicles, but just a brief sample, as you can see on the screen here. Diane Wolf from Dreamers Coffee, also Macaulay Ragnall Peck, who adopted her son Thorne, who has Down syndrome, and I've also had 6 out of 8 of the cast members of the show Born This Way, who I got to meet up with Megan at the leadership conference last month. And on specialchronicles.com/born this way, you can listen or even watch all conversations with the cast, including Megan Baumgars and her mom Chris, and Christina did Mariano and Elena and mom Holmy and Sean and mom Sandra, Stephen and his mom Claudia, and the family of Waco, who is the youngest new cast member of Born This Way. His family, his parents Chris and Amy, and his sister Alexis, all of them have appeared on Special Chronicles. You can gain a lot of insight behind the scenes of this show, and them sharing a lot of stories of what it was like to have a film crew follow them along in their lives. And so it's an excellent series that we have here on Special Chronicles that you can listen or watch. So you can, if you missed any of our live coverage on Special Chronicles at the leadership conference, you can go on to specialchronicles.com/BDLC 2017. There's a banner at the top of our site right now. And those links to all of our Facebook live streams that I was doing there at the Puncher Block with Megan and Mom Chris, and Lowen Puddle's speech before the wind had come down on everyone. I also put a link up to live talk that I gave on that Saturday and Sunday. And as I mentioned, the conversation with Anthony, that full video is linked on specialchronicles.com/PBLC 2017. And then there's the audio podcast as well, if you are interested in hearing any of our coverage on there. So I'd like to thank you for listening, and you can tune in, as I said, to any of our coverage from the leadership conference, or tune in to our Born This Way a series on specialchronicles.com/bonus way. You can follow Special Chronicles on Facebook and Instagram at Special Chronicles, and then Twitter at Special C Podcast. Oh, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to get in touch with me, my email is daniel@specialchronicles.com, or on social media at podmandan. And if you look on the agenda tab, there is a PDF that you can right-click to download that has more information on Special Chronicles that you can share with your volunteers and with your programs if they would like more information on Special Chronicles. So now I'll pass it on to Katie if there are any questions.
Yeah, there are, Daniel. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story and kind of what's gotten you here to this point. And I know that there's been a lot of interesting feedback just, from other students that we work with and volunteers that we work with in colleges and in the community that would love to start their podcast. I think just being an available resource to them is so important, and I really appreciate your availability to kind of help, guide the way to other individuals that are hoping to achieve their goals in this way. So one of the questions we have here is, Daniel, how important do you feel public speaking is for people with disabilities? A lot of people will say that they're nervous about public speaking. Most people avoid it like the plague. So how important do you see it for people with disabilities, and what would you do to encourage people with disabilities to use their voice? How do you message that?
Well, it's really important for adults with disabilities to be able to speak to groups and to share those stories, because then people can have a greater understanding and acceptance on what they are able to do, and to get on platforms, whether it's podcasts or if they use social media, or people then are by hearing their stories, then they can have a greater inclusion within the community in whatever other organizations that they are involved in.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, for the people that are interested in starting their own podcast, I know that you obviously got started in college, and there's tons of resources out there when you're in college to support, individuals that want to get on the airwaves. Do you have any recommendations for maybe people that live at home or are in a smaller community and not in college and are interested in starting their own podcast? Where should they go to start doing what you've done?
Well, one of the easiest ways to start is today with the inventions of smartphones, or with the internet, you can easily recode with either a voicemail app or just get in a simple microphone and plugging that in to the computer. But just another idea is just reach out to other podcasts, or even reach out to myself for guidance and tips on how to kind of work through a lot of the technology, because there's a lot of technology that goes involved into setting up a podcast.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, thank you. So Daniel, were there other things that motivated you to inspire people with disabilities other than your own personal story?
So one of our early guests on Special Chronicles was Tim Shriver Jr., who co-founded Spread the Word to End the World. And I communicated a lot with him, not just on air, but off air, to really get tips on growing Special Chronicles and growing this a media platform. And so him and his family have been a big inspiration to me from the early days, from when I started to today.
Awesome. Thank you. That's definitely a good inspiration.
Yeah.
Daniel, what kind of future do you see for people with disabilities? These are some of the questions we've got coming in.
I see a future where there's more inclusion within our communities, and by using different media platforms, and by more people with disabilities going out and speaking, kind of going back to the public speaking, by more people sharing their stories, then I think that then there will be a much better acceptance and inclusion in the future, and just by getting more people involved, whether it's with Special Studies or with Special Chronicles or Special Olympics, or and to have these platforms to share those stories, I think that is a big part that will bring about more inclusion in our community.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Some other questions we're getting are about the individuals that you have on your podcast. You know, first of all, you know, how do you go about choosing who's going to speak on the podcast? And, you know, what your screening process is like. If, you know, you would just like everyone to come and speak on it, or if you have specific expectations for the speakers that you have on your podcast.
Usually what I do is if someone has either been on a TV show, or they've been in a movie, or if they've either written a book or have done something to better our world, then those are usually some of the top guests that have been on the show. But then if other listeners, or maybe if other friends have even recommended people and said that, oh, this person has an inspiring story that will be great to come on the show to talk, then I'll welcome them on. So a lot of how I choose the guests are based on either recommendations or on reading other stories online, and that's usually how I try to judge the guests, and based on what story might be powerful to tell on the show.
So is that kind of how you go about encouraging other podcasters to start? You know, just looking online, looking to see, you know, pop culture-wise, who's in the media, who is kind of furthering this movement and attention and awareness for people with disabilities?
Yeah. I I try to see kind of who is foregoing inclusion and acceptance for adults with disabilities through entertainment and media.
Sure. I'm just wondering how hard it was to kind of get to the point where you're at with the followers that you have. Obviously there's no such thing as an overnight success, but then you also say you had Tim Shriver as one of your first, individuals on your podcast. It seems like a pretty big get. So I'm wondering what that process was like and how you built your fan base and your followers to get to a point where you're able to ask, some major figures in this movement to be on your podcast.
Well, when I started and started just putting my story out there on the show at the very beginning, then they came across Special Chronicles, and once then they heard my story, then they were interested in coming on as a guest. So it started with just my story, and then once I made contact with Kimball, then that kind of then helped to spread to get more guests and more people involved to listen and communicate with us.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. So Daniel, where do you see yourself growing? Not just personally and professionally as an advocate for the disability rights movement, but in the future, first of all, where do you see Special Chronicles in 5 years? What's your goal? And then beyond that, long term for this podcast?
Yeah, so what I see for the future is to have others with disabilities to be able to have their own podcast or even write stories and grow this as a bigger media platform to allow other people to either host their own talk shows or either write stories or produce videos or audio and grow this as a platform that anyone who has special needs, or even those who don't, can share those stories on our platform on Special Chronicles. So basically growing this platform to allow more people than just the few of us that are involved in it already.
And what about for yourself? That's a great goal for Special Chronicles, and including more individuals in leading that. That's definitely the place where you want to get to, where you can have other individuals kind of sharing your goal and story. Where do you see yourself as an advocate for the disability rights movement in your career moving forward?
For myself, I see to get involved in other media platforms, whether it's on TV or radio, to be able to advocate on not just the small media platform that Special Chronicles is, but to get involved in whether it's anchoring a disability special on TV or whether it's involved in another TV show, like whether it's boneless way or speechless, or to kind of get involved with other media platforms, to have to grow the impact that I'm making.
Yeah, making some big budget films in the future then.
Yeah.
Moving on to bigger and better things. We definitely have a lot of questions for you, and I appreciate you just being so open with what you've accomplished and how you want to help others. In preparing for your podcast, is there a special thing that you do, a special process that you have to prepare for each podcast?
So usually what I do for each episode is I'll type up a list of show notes with a guideline of topics and a guideline of questions that can kind of guide the conversation, and sometimes I might not even get to all the topics or questions, kind of depending on where the conversation flows. But I'll use Google Docs to really kind of outline the script. Like I'll have a little intro and outro script that I'll just to kind of keep it a little bit unstructured, but then for the bulk of the majority of the episode, I'll kind of use those guided questions or guided topics, and then I'll just kind of let the bulk of the majority of the episode kind of based on whatever the guest would want to talk about, and then I'll end it with the outro and I have some audio clips that I'll kind of play to kind of intro and outro the episodes. But then I try to kind of let the conversation go depending on how the guests or what the guests would want to talk about.
Awesome. Thank you. So can you just give a little bit of advice maybe we can share with our volunteers and the people that we work with about advice for people, that have disabilities, who maybe feel alone? What advice do you give? How do you empower people with disabilities?
So how I try to empower others is to talk about what they like to do, kind of what they'll get to know, what hobbies they like, what they like to do for fun, and maybe even say some jokes and just to kind of get that informal conversation going, and then that would then lead to kind of them feeling more comfortable to share those stories, whether they're giving a speech to a live audience or whether they're talking on a podcast or in another interview. But really kind of getting that informal conversation between friends going, I found to be the best way to empower others.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And in just speaking about your time with a leadership conference, and again, we're grateful that you came and shared, with so many of your followers that we're doing at leadership conference and really made an impact that way. We'd love to know, what was your favorite part of the weekend? And what did you see that was missing from the weekend? What should we be doing? And as far as building up new opportunities to offer to our leaders, to kind of share your vision of empowering people with disabilities and making media more inclusive of people with disabilities.
So, well, my favorite part of the weekend was seeing the enthusiasm from all the students and seeing what they were learning about in their sessions. And then as for what to kind of improve on, other leaders, others with disabilities and those without to use podcasting or using on social media, whether it's within audio recorder or just their phones, to get the practice of interviewing others and to talk about what they are doing at the leadership conference, or kind of to give more people a chance to get involved in podcasting, or even to use social media that will bring about a better change in their community.
No, absolutely. That's great. I definitely see a huge opportunity moving forward to use podcasting, with our students to make sure that they're sharing their stories, especially with obviously an expert in-house now, being able to share it. That feedback would be really, really incredible. And I guess there's one more question. Who is your favorite person to interview of all time and why?
That's a difficult question. It's hard to pick just one guest because they're all so incredible to have on. But I'll have to say, recently you talk with the cast members that I have of Born This Way, I think have been really incredible to get to talk with them and gain insight from them of what it's like to have a camera crew, to follow them around and kind of get their perspective of being on an Emmy-winning show. So that so one of the
that's cool.
most recent guests is the 6 out of 8 of the cast members of Born This Way.
Yeah, no, I can totally understand that. That'd be a lot of fun just to hear their perspective. Okay, well, that was all the questions that we had.
Awesome question.
For the individuals. Yeah. We could keep you here all day, but.
So if we have no more questions, I just want to thank everyone for attending, and especially Daniel for sharing his knowledge and expertise. In those downloads, he did provide links to access his podcast, his videos, and to access him. So feel free to flood his email and inbox and Twitter with your thoughts, because I know he'll welcome it. I really hope that this was an inspiring talk, because I know we're inspired here in Miami. And I hope I recorded it for the future. And just thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Daniel.